My wife shouldn't have come if she couldn't keep up. That was what my son-in-law said while my 66-year-old wife sat on the polished concrete floor of his event warehouse, clutching the shoulder she had undergone surgery on 6 weeks earlier. I was 68 years old, and in all my years, I had never heard another human being sound so irritated by someone else's pain. The fundraiser around us had gone quiet. Half-folded banquet tables stood in rows beneath strings of white lights. A champagne flute rolled under a chair and stopped against my shoe. My wife, Linda, had been helping straighten place cards because our daughter had begged her to come early, nothing more. She was never supposed to lift anything, yet I had walked through the side entrance just in time to see my son-in-law, Travis, shove a loaded folding cart toward her and snap, "If you're going to stand there, at least make yourself useful." Linda told him she couldn't pull it because of her shoulder. He yanked the handle away so hard that the cart swung sideways, clipped her hip, and knocked her backward into the edge of a display table. She hit the floor with a sound I still hear when the house is too quiet. Travis did not kneel. He did not ask whether she was all right. He threw up both hands and looked at the guests beginning to stare. "She lost her balance," he said. "Don't turn this into a scene." I dropped beside my wife, checked her breathing, and told one of the caterers to call 911 while I supported Linda's neck and kept her from trying to stand. Then I looked at Travis and said, "Don't touch anything. Don't move that cart. Don't ask anyone to clean this up." His face changed. "Are you serious?" he asked. I was already taking pictures of the cart, the table, the black skid mark near Linda's shoe, and the security camera mounted above the loading doors. "Very," I said. Our daughter Megan came rushing from the ballroom with our 11-year-old granddaughter Sophie behind her. Megan froze when she saw her mother on the floor. Sophie began crying. Travis immediately stepped between them and Linda. "It was an accident," he said. "Your mom shouldn't have been back here." I watched my daughter's eyes move from her husband to her mother and then to me. She looked frightened, not confused. That mattered. I told Megan to take Sophie into the office and keep her there until the ambulance arrived. Then I pointed at the camera and asked the warehouse manager, a young man named Luis, "Does that record continuously?" Luis glanced at Travis before answering. That mattered too. "Cloud backup," he said quietly. 30 days. Travis snapped. "Luis, go help the guests." I turned toward him. "No. Luis is going to preserve that footage." Travis took a step toward me. I stood up, not because I wanted to fight him, but because I wanted him to understand that the next step was his choice. I had spent 34 years as a municipal fire and building safety inspector. I had stood inside burned-out factories, collapsed stairwells, restaurants with blocked exits, churches with faulty wiring, and warehouses where owners thought a smile and a handshake were enough to erase a violation. I knew what panic looked like when someone suddenly realized the room contained evidence. Travis was wearing that expression now. "You're making this into something it isn't," he said. I looked at my wife on the floor, and then at the extension cords taped across an emergency exit behind him, the stacked chairs blocking a fire door, and the occupancy placard partly covered by a decorative banner. "No," I said. "I think you've been making things look like something they aren't for a long time." The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. The paramedic stabilized Linda's shoulder, placed her on a stretcher, and asked what had happened. Before Linda could answer, Travis said, "She tripped over the cart." I raised my phone and said, "I witnessed it." I've also asked management to preserve the security video. One paramedic looked at me, then at Travis, then documented both statements. I went with Linda. Before the ambulance doors closed, I called Megan over. She had Sophie pressed against her side. I said, "Take your daughter home with you. Not back to this warehouse. Not tonight." Megan swallowed. "Dad, Travis says this is getting blown out of proportion." I looked at my granddaughter, who was staring at the blood beginning to seep through the cuff of Linda's blouse where the surgical incision had partially reopened. "Then he can explain that to the police," I said. Megan went pale. Travis heard me from 10 feet away. "Police?" he shouted. "You're calling the police over an accident?" I did not answer him. I climbed into the ambulance beside my wife, held her good hand, and made one more call before the doors shut. It was not to a politician, not to some mysterious government friend, and not to anyone who could magically destroy a man's life overnight. I called my attorney, a woman named Denise Carter, who had handled our wills and property matters for 15 years. She answered on the second ring. "Paul, what happened?" she asked. I watched Linda close her eyes against the pain. "My son-in-law just put my wife in an ambulance," I said, "and I think what happened tonight is connected to something much bigger." Denise was quiet for a moment. "Do you have evidence?" she asked. I looked back through the ambulance window at the warehouse disappearing behind us. "I think I've been staring at it for months," I said. "I just didn't know what I was seeing. 6 months earlier, I would have told you that Travis Reed was difficult, arrogant, and too impressed with his own success, but I would not have called him dangerous. He had married our daughter Megan 8 years earlier after meeting her at a convention center, where she managed corporate events. He was energetic, charming when he wanted to be, and always talking about scale, expansion, leverage, and the next big contract. Megan had been the practical one. She handled schedules, payroll, vendor agreements, and customer complaints while Travis handled sales. Together, they built Reed Premier Events from a 2-truck rental business into one of the busiest event companies in Central Ohio. At first, Linda and I were proud of them. We babysat Sophie when they worked late, helped repaint their first office, and loaned them money once when a hotel client delayed payment. But success changed the air around Travis. He began correcting Megan in front of people. He would ask her a question and answer it himself before she finished. He started telling jokes about how she was great with details but not built for big decisions. At family dinners, Megan watched his face before giving opinions. Linda noticed it first. Mothers often do. One Sunday on the drive home, she said, "My daughter asks permission with her eyes." I told her not to read too much into a bad mood. I regret that sentence more than most things I have said in my life. Gradually, Travis began using our help as if it were part of his operating budget. He would ask Linda to watch Sophie during setup weekends, then send her to pick up table linens on the way. He asked me to take a quick look at the warehouse after they leased it, and I told him immediately that the rear fire doors needed to remain clear, and the electrical load for their lighting rigs needed professional review. He smiled and told me I had been retired 3 years and could stop inspecting things. I laughed at the time. A few months later, Megan called at 11 at night, asking if I knew whether a temporary occupancy permit could be extended after a failed inspection. I asked why. She said Travis was just being proactive and hung up too quickly. The next week, I stopped by their house with groceries Linda had made. Sophie opened the door before anyone else could reach it. She hugged me, then whispered, "Grandpa, Dad gets really mad when Mom talks to you about work." I crouched down and asked what she meant. Before she could answer, Travis came into the hallway and said, "Sophie, don't start stories." He was smiling, but the child stepped behind me. I should have done more that day. Instead, I let Megan tell me everything was fine. 3 months after that, Linda came home from helping Megan at a charity luncheon with a bruise on her forearm. She said she had bumped into a storage rack. I asked her twice. She became irritated and told me to stop interrogating her. Later that night, she admitted Travis had grabbed her arm when she tried to stop him from yelling at Megan in the loading bay. "He let go right away," she said. "He was upset. They have a lot of pressure. I felt my whole body go cold." "He put his hands on you?" I asked. Linda reached across the kitchen table and covered my wrist. "Paul, if you go after him, he'll take Megan and Sophie farther away. He's already told Megan he could move the company to Tennessee and make sure we barely see them." That was the first time I understood what Linda had been trying to prevent. She was not protecting Travis because she loved him. She was trying to keep access to our daughter and granddaughter. It was still the wrong strategy, but it came from fear, not foolishness. I told her we needed to tell Megan. Linda begged me to wait until she found a safe way to talk to her alone. I agreed to 1 week. That week became 2, because Travis took Megan and Sophie to a trade show. Then Sophie got sick. Then Megan said things were calmer. We let the urgent become ordinary, and that was our mistake. During those same weeks, I started seeing other things. An invoice from an electrician Travis had asked me to recommend contained work I knew that electrician had refused to do. A county inspection sticker on one of Travis's trailers had a serial number format that had not been used in 2 years. A vendor I knew from my inspection days asked me casually why Reed Premier was storing propane heaters indoors. I told him I did not know. He replied, "I figured you'd be involved. being family. I was not involved, but people assumed I was because Travis liked dropping my name. That bothered me enough to speak with Denise. She did not tell me to investigate him. She told me the opposite. Do not play detective, she said. If you personally observe something unsafe, document what you saw. If someone asks whether you approved something, correct the record. Otherwise, stay out of his business. So I did. I kept a folder containing emails where Travis had implied that I endorsed his warehouse setup, and I replied in writing every time that I had not. I saved a photo Megan accidentally texted me of an overloaded electrical panel before quickly deleting the message. I wrote down the date Linda came home bruised. That was all. I was not preparing revenge. I was preparing not to be used as someone else's excuse. Then came the fundraiser. Linda agreed to help Megan arrange place cards because Sophie was performing with her school choir that evening, and Linda wanted to be there. I was supposed to meet them after a doctor's appointment. I arrived early. I walked into the loading area and watched Travis turn frustration into violence. In that moment, every excuse we had allowed ourselves disappeared. At the hospital, doctors found that Linda's repaired rotator cuff had been partially torn again, and the edge of the table had split the incision. She would need another procedure, but there was no head injury and no internal bleeding. I thanked God for that. Then a uniformed officer named Ramirez came into the room and took our statements separately. Linda looked at me once before speaking. I could see the old fear there, the instinct to soften things so Megan would not pay the price. I said nothing. I did not answer for her. I just held her hand until she finally said, he jerked the cart toward me after I told him. I couldn't move it. He knew about my surgery. Officer Ramirez asked whether Travis had hurt her before. Linda's mouth trembled. He grabbed my arm once, she said. I didn't report it. The officer wrote it down. When she finished, Linda looked at me and whispered, I should have said something sooner. I told her, you're saying it now. That was the first moment I knew this story would not end with me rescuing my wife while she remained silent. She was going to have to rescue part of herself too. The next morning, Denise came to our house after Linda was discharged. She did not bring an army of investigators or promise to ruin anybody. She brought a yellow legal pad, coffee, and 3 questions. What happened? What evidence exists? And what is the immediate safety risk? We told her about the warehouse video, Linda's previous bruise, Sophie's comment about Travis getting angry, and the strange business paperwork I had seen over the months. Denise separated everything into 2 piles. The assault stays with police, she said. The business issues stay separate unless they overlap. Do not mix them because you're angry. I respected her for saying that. She contacted the warehouse manager's attorney and sent a preservation request for the security footage. Officer Ramirez had already requested it as part of the incident report. Then Denise asked me about Sophie. Where is she now? Megan had taken her to our niece's house the night before, rather than going home with Travis. That was the first encouraging thing our daughter had done. Around noon, Megan arrived alone. She looked exhausted and furious. Dad, what did you tell the police? She asked before she had even taken off her coat. Linda was resting upstairs, so I brought Megan into the kitchen and told her exactly what I had said. Nothing more, nothing less. She paced between the table and the sink. Travis says Mom stumbled and you're using this because you never liked him. I said, what do you think happened? She stopped. I wasn't there. Then let's wait for the video. She looked at me sharply. You think there's a video? I know there are cameras. Megan sat down. For the first time, anger slipped and fear showed underneath. Dad, if this becomes a criminal case, it could destroy the company. I leaned across the table. Your mother did not land on that floor to protect a company. Megan flinched. I softened my voice, but not the point. Your husband's business is not more important than your mother's safety. Or yours. Or Sophie's. She looked away. I asked the question I had been afraid to ask for months. Are you scared of him? Megan immediately said no. Too quickly. Then she started crying. She covered her face and said, I don't know what I am anymore. That was when the story changed. She told me Travis had not hit her, but he controlled money, passwords, company records, and almost every decision. He told her she was lucky to be part owner because she would never be able to run anything alone. He had recently insisted she sign several routine equipment renewals without letting her read them. When she objected, he told her he would close the company, fire 40 people, and blame her. He had also told Sophie that if Grandma and Grandpa caused trouble, they might have to move away. Linda had been right. Fear for access to family had kept all of us quiet, and Travis had learned to use that silence. Denise asked Megan to bring copies of anything she had signed. Megan said Travis kept all final documents at the office. "Do you have electronic access?" Denise asked. Megan nodded. She still had login credentials for the company's accounting platform because she ran payroll. Denise stopped her from opening anything on our kitchen computer. "Use only accounts you are authorized to access," she said. "Do not guess passwords. Do not take files you have no right to take. Download only records you normally use in your work, and keep a log of what you accessed." That afternoon, Megan discovered the first thing that made her stop defending Travis. One of the equipment leases listed her as a personal guarantor for $280,000. Her signature was electronic. She remembered signing something on Travis's tablet while they were driving to dinner, but he had told her it was a renewal under the company's existing line. The lease itself was not necessarily forged, but the email attached to it contained a message from Travis to the lender saying, "Megan has reviewed the full package and understands the personal exposure." She had not. Worse, the collateral schedule referenced assets stored at a second location Megan did not recognize. When she searched the company's insurance list, she found that location too, a smaller warehouse on the edge of town rented under a separate LLC managed by Travis. Denise advised her to stop digging and speak with her own business attorney. "You may have a conflict with your husband now," she said. "You need independent counsel." That was how the financial side began. Not because I made a magic phone call, but because Megan finally started asking what her own name had been used for. Meanwhile, the police obtained the fundraiser footage. Officer Ramirez called Linda 2 days later and asked whether we could come to the station. In a small interview room, he played the video without sound. We watched Linda reach for the cart, shake her head, and gesture toward her shoulder. We watched Travis yank the handle, whip the cart around, and drive its corner into Linda's hip. We watched her fall. Then we watched him look down at her for nearly 4 seconds, before turning toward the guests instead of helping. Linda stared at the screen and whispered, "I kept telling myself maybe I remembered it wrong." Officer Ramirez paused the video. "Mrs. Bennett, you didn't." Linda asked for a copy through the proper process. "She did not ask me what we should do." She looked at the officer and said, "I want to continue with the complaint." I had never been prouder of her. The business consequences took weeks, not hours, and most of them had nothing to do with me. Once Megan retained separate counsel, her attorney reviewed the guarantee documents and found that Travis had moved liabilities between related companies without clearly disclosing them to her. The second warehouse turned out to store hundreds of propane-fueled patio heaters, fabric backdrops, electrical cabling, and temporary flooring. That alone was not criminal, but its operating conditions raised safety concerns. Megan's attorney advised her that because she was listed as an officer of the main company, she needed to ensure she was not personally certifying inaccurate information. She contacted the company's insurance broker and learned that the second warehouse had been described as dry furniture storage on one policy application. She also learned that her own digital signature had been used on a safety attestation she did not remember completing. Her attorney reported the disputed certification to the insurer and lender. Separately, Luis, the warehouse manager who had preserved the fundraiser footage, resigned. Before he left, he gave police a statement saying Travis had ordered staff several times to move furniture in front of exits during events because fire inspectors only come during business hours. When the city received a complaint about blocked egress and indoor fuel storage, an inspection was scheduled through the normal process. I had nothing to do with assigning it. In fact, I made a point of calling my former department only once, and that was to say I had a family connection and did not want anyone discussing the case with me. A younger inspector named Devin handled it. He later documented multiple violations, issued correction orders, and temporarily restricted use of one portion of the second warehouse until hazards were fixed. That was serious, But it was not the end of the company. What endangered the company more was Travis's response. Instead of correcting problems, he blamed employees. He sent angry messages. He threatened to sue Luis. He told a hotel client that the city inspection was retaliation orchestrated by a bitter retired inspector, meaning me. That hotel's risk manager asked for documentation. Travis could not produce what he claimed. The client paused 2 upcoming events until the issues were resolved. Then the equipment lender asked questions about collateral at the second location. The insurer asked questions about the safety attestation. One problem exposed another, because Travis had built a system that depended on everyone accepting whatever explanation he gave first. Now people were checking. 3 weeks after the fundraiser, Megan came to our house with Sophie and 2 suitcases. Linda opened the door and did not ask a single question. She simply hugged our daughter and granddaughter and brought them inside. That evening, Sophie sat beside me on the back porch and said, "Grandpa, is Dad going to jail?" I told her, "Adults are figuring out what happened. Your job is to be 11. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "He told me Grandma fell because she's old." I had to look away for a moment. "Grandma fell because something happened that should not have happened," I said, and she told the truth about it. Sophie nodded. Then she said something that made the whole story feel larger than the warehouse. "Mom tells the truth more now, too." Megan filed for a temporary protective order after Travis showed up at our house late one night, pounding on the front door and demanding she return company property. We did not open the door. We called police, showed them the messages he had sent, and let procedure handle it. He was not arrested that night, but the incident was documented, and the court later ordered that communication go through attorneys, except for agreed parenting matters. There was no dramatic takedown. There were forms, hearings, phone calls, and long afternoons where nothing seemed to happen. That was what real consequences looked like. Slow, frustrating, built on records instead of speeches. Yet the emotional pressure on Travis increased because he was losing the one thing he valued most: control over the story. He had always decided what each event meant. Linda was too sensitive. Megan was bad with money. Sophie was dramatic. I was an old inspector who couldn't retire. Employees were ungrateful. Clients were nervous. Regulators were harassing him. But the more people looked at documents, video, and dates, the less room his version had to breathe. The final confrontation happened 6 weeks after the fundraiser in Denise Carter's conference room, not because we wanted a showdown, but because Travis's attorney requested mediation on Linda's civil claim related to her medical expenses and lost mobility. By then, the criminal investigation into the warehouse incident was proceeding separately. Travis had been charged with misdemeanor assault based on the video and statements, though the case had not yet been resolved. Megan's business dispute was also separate. Denise warned us not to turn the meeting into a family argument. "Today is about Linda's claim," she said. "Nothing else." Linda sat beside me wearing a soft gray sweater over the shoulder brace she still needed. Megan was not in the room because Denise did not want to mix matters, but Linda had asked her permission to mention one thing if Travis tried to blame her. At 10 o'clock, Travis entered with his attorney. He looked different from the man who had stood over my wife in the warehouse. Not destroyed, not broken, just smaller somehow, because certainty had drained out of him. He did not look at Linda at first. His attorney opened with numbers, insurance limits, disputed fault, and the possibility of settlement. Then Travis interrupted. "This whole thing got out of hand," he said. His attorney touched his arm, but he kept talking. "Linda wasn't supposed to be doing physical work. Megan asked her to help. I was trying to move equipment and she stepped into the wrong place." Linda's hand tightened around mine. Denise asked calmly, "Mr. Reed, are you saying Mrs. Bennett was never instructed to move equipment?" "Absolutely," he said. "I would never ask someone with shoulder surgery to do that." Denise slid a printed email across the table. It was from Travis to Linda 2 days before the fundraiser. Linda had found it while searching her inbox for the event address. The message read, "Could use an extra pair of hands on setup. Megan says your shoulder is doing better. Folding carts should be easy enough." Travis stared at the paper. His attorney closed his eyes. Denise asked, "Did you send that?" Travis said, "That doesn't mean I asked her to lift anything." Denise placed a still image from the security video beside it, showing Linda pointing at her shoulder while Travis held the cart handle. "Then what is happening here?" she asked. Travis leaned back. "She was refusing to move. I just took the cart from her." Linda spoke before anyone else could. "You didn't take it from me. You ripped it sideways after I said I couldn't do it. Then you looked at me on the floor and told everyone I shouldn't have come." He finally looked at her. "I was under pressure." Linda nodded once. "So was my shoulder." No one spoke for several seconds. His attorney asked for a break. When they returned, Travis was quieter. He said he was willing to cover Linda's medical bills through insurance, but would not admit intentional harm. Denise explained that the video and police case would continue regardless of settlement. Then Travis did what people like him often do when excuses stop working. He reached for family. "Paul," he said, turning to me, "you know what this is doing to Megan and Sophie. You got what you wanted." Megan left. "The company is barely operating. Clients are walking. How much more is enough?" I had imagined that moment many times, and in some versions I gave a speech. In the real room, I found I only needed a few sentences. "You keep saying I did this to you," I said. "I called an ambulance for my wife. I gave police what I witnessed. I told people the truth when you used my name." Megan read documents carrying her own signature. Employees answered questions about their own workplace. Clients made their own decisions. "I did not build your problems, Travis. I just stopped helping you hide them." His jaw tightened. "You could fix some of this if you wanted." "No," I said. "I could help you avoid some of it. That is not the same thing." Linda turned toward him. Her voice was gentle, which somehow made it harder. For years I thought keeping peace meant swallowing whatever happened. I thought if I stayed kind, Megan would stay close, and Sophie would keep both parents. All I did was teach you that I would absorb the cost. I'm not doing that anymore. Travis stared at her. "So that's it? I'm not family now?" Linda shook her head. "Family is not a license." His attorney asked for another recess. They eventually reached a civil agreement covering Linda's medical expenses, rehabilitation, and additional damages without requiring her to withdraw or change her criminal statement. It was not a fortune. It did not destroy anyone's life. It simply forced responsibility where Travis had spent years placing the cost on other people. When the meeting ended, he stood near the door and looked at me as if waiting for one last exchange. I had none to give him. For the first time since I had known him, there was no reason for me to explain anything. 9 months later, Linda and I sat in the bleachers of Sophie's middle school auditorium, while our granddaughter played a nervous but enthusiastic violin solo at the winter concert. Megan sat between us. The divorce was not final yet, but she had moved into a townhouse 10 minutes from our home and had taken a bookkeeping position with a medical supply company. The event business survived in a smaller form after Travis sold one warehouse, settled several vendor disputes, and brought in an outside operations manager required by a lender. He was no longer allowed to use my name or claim any connection to my former department, something my attorney put in writing after one final dispute. The city case involving safety violations resulted in fines and mandatory corrections. The insurer rescinded coverage on one disputed location after reviewing its application. The criminal assault case ended with Travis accepting a plea that included probation, anger management, and a no-contact provision regarding Linda, except through counsel. Some people would say that was too little. Others would say losing his marriage, much of his business, and the trust of his daughter was enough. I stopped measuring justice by how miserable he looked. That was never the point. The point was that the behavior had stopped. Records existed. Boundaries were enforceable, and my family was safer. Linda went through months of physical therapy and then surprised everyone by joining a support group for families affected by coercive control. She told me afterward that she had spent most of her life believing compassion meant understanding why people behaved badly. Now she understood something else. Understanding someone doesn't require standing where they can keep hurting you, she said. Megan struggled more. She carried guilt for the years she defended Travis, and for every time she asked her mother to let something go, Linda refused to let her turn guilt into another kind of prison. One Sunday morning, over pancakes, Megan said, "Mom, I keep thinking about all the times you tried to help me. Linda reached across the table and said, "Then use that memory to help yourself now. Don't use it to punish yourself." Sophie changed too. At first, she asked permission for everything, even opening our refrigerator. Slowly, she stopped. She began leaving her backpack in the hallway and shoes by the door, small signs that she believed she belonged somewhere without earning it. One afternoon, she brought home a school assignment about family rules. At the bottom, she had written, "In my family, no one has to be scared to tell the truth." I kept that page. Not because the months before had been some victory, but because that sentence told me what had actually been rebuilt. I used to think protecting family meant stepping between danger and the people you love. Sometimes it does. But sometimes protection means refusing to smooth over the truth after the danger has passed. It means calling 911 before you call the lawyer. It means preserving a camera recording instead of starting a fistfight. It means letting your wife speak for herself, even when you want to speak for her. It means telling your daughter the door is open without dragging her through it. It means accepting that consequences take time, that courts move slowly, that businesses do not collapse because of one dramatic phone call, and that people usually reveal themselves through patterns long before they finally cross a line no one can ignore. If I had one regret, it was not that I failed to hit Travis that night. It was that Linda and I mistook silence for peace long before the fundraiser. We thought we were keeping the family together. In reality, we were allowing one person to decide what everyone else had to tolerate in order to remain connected. I know better now. Linda knows better. Megan knows better. And most importantly, Sophie is learning something earlier than all of us did. Love does not require fear. Kindness does not require surrender. Family does not mean someone gets unlimited chances to harm you. The night Travis knocked my wife to the warehouse floor, I thought the most important call I made was to my attorney. I was wrong about that too. The most important call was the first one, the call for help while my wife was still hurting. Everything good that came afterward started with finally treating the harm as real.